More people will travel on a bus today than on rail, underground or air combined. But bus operators across the UK are facing some very tough times. In England, for example, central and local government subsidy accounts for about half their revenue. Passengers pay the other half, of course. But the subsidies are under enormous pressure. A new campaign is being launched today. Save Our Buses, it's called. It's even launched a map that shows the damage being done to bus services in England through spending cuts. The worst affected area is Cambridge. Stephen Joseph is launching Save Our Buses. Mac McGuire is the Deputy Leader of Cambridgeshire County Council. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Morning.
Stephen Joseph, just tell us what your worry is about the cuts that bus operators are facing.
Well, bus services are facing multiple cuts from different sources of government funding. The concessionary fares, the free travel for pensioners isn't being funded properly. There's general cuts to local authority funding from the Department of Communities and Local Government. And there are other cuts coming next year with general government funding for bus operators. And all of this is leading to quite significant cuts in bus services across the country. And Cambridgeshire is one that we've identified as making some really big cuts.
And which sorts of services are you most worried about? It's rural areas that basically will have virtually no public transport left, is your contingency?
It's rural areas, it's suburban areas, it's evening services, even in quite large towns that are disappearing, evening and weekend services. North Yorkshire County Council is cutting all of those, for instance. Somerset is taking out a lot of services that'll, affect quite large areas, even into South Bristol. So, and this will matter because not just because of the people who use them, but of other aspects of government policy. If the government really wants people to get off welfare and into work, they're going to need transport for it.
Mac McGuire, how serious do you expect your cuts to be on the services that passengers will notice in your county?
Well, inevitably there's going to be some significant impact. However, what we here in Cambridgeshire are doing is addressing that problem by, for instance, this afternoon in the town of March in Cambridgeshire, I have arranged a summit. That is where we're bringing around 50 different representatives from right across the community. National Health Service,
You're having
schools.
a meeting?
It's not a meeting, it is a meeting, it's a summit, but it's intended to get people round the table, community transport providers. We're even going to be hearing from one of the major social enterprise providers of community transport. That's the Hackney Community Transport, whom I'm sure Stephen probably knows well. They operate in London. They're coming along to give us an example of what can actually happen if the community works together. We need to do this. We need to.
There's words. Do you think there are practical things you can do to re-engineer the services so that you can spend less and have services so people who want to get to work, for example, can do so?
Well, that's all the point I'm making. That is why, authorities like Cambridgeshire, we don't actually have a statutory responsibility to provide transport. We have done so. We've tried to fill gaps where commercial operators have chosen, for whatever reason, usually it's because they say it's commercially not viable to provide them. However, and as Stephen's already outlined, the cuts that we are facing are significant. Cambridgeshire, as an example, has to face £160 million worth of savings in the next 4 years.
We feel your pain.
We feel your pain. Together.
Sorry to interrupt. We feel your pain, but it's whether you've got a practical idea for something you can do to sort the problem out.
Well, this is why we're getting together this afternoon. It isn't just a seminar.
But you haven't got one you can give us yet. There's no...
Well, I'll give you an example. Yes, we are investing more in community transport. We're providing more grants into the community transport.
What is community transport?
The dialer ride. I'm sure many of your listeners will be very familiar with the dialer ride type. These are largely they're volunteers, but who have got together when it's the minibus, So that's how we're working, but, we're working with other people as well to do this.
Stephen Joseph, I mean, everything, everywhere is facing cuts. Public transport has to take its share, and there probably are efficiencies you can make. I mean, I believe at some services you're spending £10 per passenger in subsidy, which is just frankly unrealistic, isn't it?
It is, and of course there are efficiencies to be made, but the sort of cuts we're seeing now go far beyond anything that can be dealt with through efficiencies, and I'm not sure that community transport on its own will actually sort out the problems of the sort that Cambridgeshire are facing. We think that this needs to be looked at again by national government in relation to sharing transport costs across different governments' departments, rather than just leaving it to transport to take all the cuts.
Stephen Joseph, Mac McGuire, thank you both.